My cousin destroyed my Game Boy, kills my fish, and killed her bunnies to get a new one. I, F27, been asked to post a story here about my cousin. I've previously told the story of how my entitled bridezilla aunt managed to ruin her wedding, and I mentioned her daughter, 14, whom I affectionately named Demon Spawn. I call her that in private too. My aunt is a formerly successful social climber who raised Demon Spawn after the divorce from the wealthy, but humble and friendly father. They got divorced when my cousin was around 3. Until then, Demon Spawn was a typical only child, a little entitled but within reason. After that, and through no fault of her own, she started acting out. Initially we had a lot of compassion, but soon it became clear that my aunt wasn't setting any boundaries or trying to help her with, for example, therapy to correct bad behavior. Instead, Demon Spawn never heard a no, got everything she wanted, and received no consequences for bad behavior. Throughout my teenage and young adult years, my aunt regularly pawned her off to me to babysit for free since we're family. My mom had offered my services. From the age of 3, when she was at our house, she would go through my things, throwing them around my room, and started hitting me and throwing things at me when I forced her to stop destroying my stuff. When I locked her out of my room, I had to spend my entire time running after her to prevent her from destroying furniture and decorations. Occasionally she would tear up my homework or books. I had to hide everything. I may have been a lot bigger and stronger than her, but a motivated, aggressive toddler is capable of inflicting a lot of pain and damage. At the age of 5, she discovered that I had an old Game Boy Advance that I was very proud of, since it was the first big thing I ever saved up for. She wanted to have it, so she searched my room violently, hitting me with a metal picture frame from my wall, nearly destroying my laptop. After multiple attempts of this, and me usually being able to prevent her finding it and destroying my room entirely, she eventually found it. When I tried to take it away from her, she threw it out of the second-story window of my room. I demanded that my aunt replace my Game Boy. She refused, calling it a risk of my job if I don't pay enough attention. My mom had to intervene and force my aunt to replace it or lose a free babysitter. My mom was only partially helpful. Demon Spawn promptly tried to destroy that one too because she didn't want me to have the new one. Her next massive tantrum was at around 7. Demon Spawn was in my apartment, since my parents didn't want her in theirs, but still demanded I babysit. I told her she couldn't play on my laptop. I managed to remove the laptop from her hands without her destroying it. She proceeded to tear everything off the walls, trying to push over my closet, emptying my closet, etc. When I finally got her out of my bedroom, she ran into the entryway. Thinking she couldn't do much there, I made the mistake of picking up some of the hazards that were now on the floor. During that brief time, she found my backpack, my wallet inside, and stole 50 euros. Nearly all of the spare money I had at the time. My aunt actually paid me back that time. That should have been my lesson. Less than a year later, I had bought myself a new aquarium with a few starter fish. She decided she wanted to hold my fish. So she stuck her hands into my aquarium, grabbed 2 fish, pulled the out, and likely squeezed them to death. I told my parents if they ever make me babysit Demon Spawn again, I would let her play unsupervised in my parents' apartment below mine. My mom stopped asking. The worst story of all is that throughout her younger years she had bunnies. Always just one. She would love them as babies, but as they grew up she got bored of her bunny and demanded a new one. My aunt would initially refuse. So Demon Spawn stopped taking care of and feeding the bunny. It would die within a few weeks, and her mom gave in and bought her a new baby bunny. She had 4 different bunnies until her mom stopped giving in. I have refused to see her since the fish incident and moved away soon after. But according to the story, she is still a nightmare that throws childlike tantrums when she doesn't get her way. According to a different aunt, she's been suspended once so far for fighting in school. An entitled guy brings his own food to the restaurant. So quite a few years ago, as I worked the restaurant gig, I called up the chef, whom I'm still friends with. It's not really my story, but belongs to the restaurant. At the time, I was just a line cook. The setting, our restaurant has a beautiful dining area. But even more beautiful is our panoramic view of the surrounding area and scenic beach view. We have a deck/patio for our guests. You just walk out and dine out there. There's also a higher area if you want to get the full overview, but it's roped off since it's used for events or overflow. Now occasionally we get a person whom uses a side exit stairway, thinking it's the entrance, and walks up. The usual, we want to take pictures or sit here with our packed lunches. Normally we usually redirect them off the patio or roped off area back into the restaurant. Most of the sack lunch people go with no issue. It was getting so bad we put signs to redirect and move people. Story: so an entitled guy waltzes his way up the side entrance with a picnic basket and a pair of bottles of wine. We have a nice variety of wine already available to order. The entitled guy moves to roped off area and sits down. He sets his own table, uncorks his bottle, and proceeds to eat and read a book. For a bit, our team of front house staff members ignores him as they think he's a sat customer. Once they realize he is not, we send over a server. One of our floor waitstaff members walks over to check on him. She notices he's not eating our food, nor drinking our wine. She decides to try to serve this person. First, she asks if he'll move to a seat in the lower area, as it'll be easier to serve him, and the area roped off is for special occasions or overflow. He refuses to leave his spot because he's comfortable there. Okay. The waitstaff person decides to go away, and 10 minutes later brings him a menu. Why? She's trying to give him a legitimate reason to occupy the chair. She tries to subtly hint we're a restaurant. She then tries telling him super nicely we're a restaurant. She's being super nice by not informing management yet. He glances at the menu and rolls his eyes. The waitstaff person walks away and gives a few minutes to read over the menu. The entitled guy returns to his book and personal food. After a second attempt, still no dice. She tries for the third time. This time, the entitled guy raises his voice and in a broken English way, like when they talk down to someone, "This area is public land. I can sit here as long as I want." He cusses her and she runs back to our kitchen crying. The server herself is a tiny-voiced, petite, timid girl with a very meek personality to match. The chef, another woman, consoles her. Our chef now turns livid. She's ticked, PO'd, and liable to bust a vein, but keeping her cool contacts manager. Meanwhile, the assistant manager walks to the entitled guy and tries to get him to leave. His reply: "This land is public. I said public American land, and I can sit here and enjoy myself if I want. I'm trying to enjoy my meal and I want to be left alone." Time to send in the big guns, our manager. Our manager, a very vocal and strong-willed woman, walks up and talks with him. She comes to the kitchen ticked but smiling. The entitled guy demanded to see his longtime friend, the owner. He name-dropped the owner's name, saying that the owner would allow him to sit there all day if he wanted. He doesn't really know the owner. The owner's name and photo is on the menu. Guess what? The owner's on site today. So our manager told him his wish has been granted and his longtime buddy, the owner, is on his way out to see him. As the manager sped off to the owner's office, the entitled guy quickly recorked his bottles and packed his food. He excused himself real fast and ran straight down the stairwell. Karen yells at security guard for doing her job. Hello Reddit, I apologize in advance for any formatting issues or spelling mistakes. I'm honestly just not the best storyteller. Unfortunately, the entitled person in the story is my mother, and I'm disgusted with her behavior, so I thought to post it here. My mother is well known to be a Karen, even joking about it herself sometimes. She is usually really sweet, but when it comes to staff or workers, her Karen side comes out full force. I have many stories about her antics. So she is labeled here as a Karen, since she wears the name proudly. Me and my partner are moving out of our house to a new town, so last week I moved back home with my parents for a few days to clean out my old storage room, while my partner went down to the new town for his first day of school. My dad had a seizure the first day I moved home, so my mom, Karen, asked me to help her with some general shopping while my grandmother watched my 4 siblings and took care of my dad. I drove us around town and to a few stores, eventually ending up at a Kmart, think Walmart for us Kiwis, but no food, only general items. She wanted to get some workout gear, so we go in, do our shopping and head to the checkouts. Hey race where things get going. She grabbed the receipt and I grabbed the items, getting ready to walk out of the store. There has been lots of theft recently due to the economic climate of my country at the moment, so security will quickly glance at your receipt, see the number of items you have and let you out. Usually they don't do this to everyone, just shady people, which has gotten the company in hot water because of racism and discrimination, so the company now makes it an effort to check all receipts, which I'm fine with. As we walk out, my mother makes it past the security scanners before the young lady working as a security guard asks to see the receipt. Big mistake. My mother immediately screws her face up and makes more than a few scoffing sounds before exclaiming loudly, "Excuse me, do I look like someone who would shoplift?" At this point, everyone at the tills is looking over and I feel like melting into a puddle to get away, as I have social anxiety. The poor lady puts her hands up in a "oh no" Karen on the loose gesture and politely explains that we need to check everyone's receipts so we aren't discriminating. Mother Karen puffs up and screws her face up more, but do I look like a shoplifter? All my clothes are labeled. All expensive brands. She then scoffs again, winding up for a whole tirade, waving the little paper that would save me from embarrassment around, all while flapping her lips like a shocked fish. She is slowly turning a lovely shade of tomato red and looks like she's going to burst. Realizing things are going to get much worse, I finally pick myself up out of my mental puddle, grab the receipt from her claws, and show the security guard, who's still attempting to placate the raging she-beast. I hand it over politely, saying, "Here, have a look. Is this okay?" while gazing longingly at those sliding doors, as I know salvation from the dirty looks hitting the back of my head is only a few steps away. The poor security guard waves me through and I grab my mother beast's shoulder to push her out. She relents, moving through and muttering about rights and managers and not doing her job, stamping her feet like a toddler. I look over my shoulder as we walk out and give the security lady, who looked like she had just been slapped, a little smile and mouthed apology. The last words I hear before the doors to salvation slid shut was the security guard commenting in a small voice, "I only needed to see the receipt, it's my job." I felt horrified. Relief flooded me as I realized that it was over, embarrassment burning at my cheeks as I shepherded the Karen to the car, all while she's still going on about how outrageous this was, and how she feels disgusting and like a vagrant all because she was asked to show her receipt. Thinking this was over, I hopped in the front seat, hands shaking and eyes tearing up. But no. The Karen turns to me, scrunched up her face, and made one more remark. This only happened because you look homeless. Wear a dress next time. Thanks, Mom. The groom betrayed his best man and fiance in one night and ruined his wedding. So for context, I work at a pretty large and fancy resort that hosts a lot of big weddings throughout the year. As you'd probably expect from a place like this, we tend to see drama every once in a while, and this is one such tale that I pieced together through various encounters and gossip from other coworkers in other departments, so it's not exactly perfect. So, it's the middle of the summer, and like usual, there was a wedding happening over the weekend. While I never met many of the guests from the wedding party, I heard bits and pieces such as the fact that the bride was this beautiful woman from a relatively wealthy family who had paid for pretty much all the wedding, while the groom wasn't so much. Whoever the groom was, it was clear he was going to be a very lucky man after the wedding as long as nothing bad happened. So the day of the wedding comes, and a mere 5 hours before the wedding is scheduled to happen, the wedding is called off. Why? Because the very night before the wedding, the groom was caught in bed with one of the housekeepers and the bride found out. This led to a massive fallout the next day with relatives getting at each other's throats and just all in all terrible stuff. What's more is that the same night, the groom and his best man were having drinks at one of the bars and racked up a $200 tab that they agreed to split at the beginning. When it came time to pay, the groom suddenly dropped the bomb that he didn't have the money and left the best man to pay for it all. I'm not sure exactly how bad this situation was, but it was apparently bad enough to the point where it evolved into a fist fight between the two that had to be broken up by security. I was working that day outside at a pool bar and was introduced to the madness when a random drunk woman stumbled into our bar somehow. Literally, no joke, she entered through our bar's door, stumbled past our liquor room, and was now standing between two very confused bartenders who up till that point had just been chatting about random stuff before she was let out. There were even guests who noticed the chaos and were asking what the heck was going on. It was just a terrible mess and a waste of a good wedding. I mean, I shouldn't be surprised that people cheat, but the fact that this guy not only decided to do it the night before his wedding to a woman who had beauty and money, who I assume is a dream for a lot of people, but he did it with a total stranger too, and right after he bailed on his best man. It's such a scummy thing for someone to do, and honestly, I hope the bride found someone better. My boss is throwing a fit over my 2 weeks. Entitled Boss Throws a Fit. I only had this job for about a month, and within this time I have gone through a lot of strike threes. This place can't hold employees, and that spooled have been the first flag. More than half of the time I was scheduled, I got to my job and was told only when I asked about it that we weren't open because someone called out and my boss never told me, or I had a 9-hour shift but was cut short because the evening person I was supposed to work with called out. I am fed up with this bullshit. I only live 30 minutes away from work, but I have to leave more than an hour early to be there on time because of traffic. I handed in my 2 weeks last Sunday, and I had given him the reasons I explained above, and the past week has been hell. My boss changed my schedule without telling me, so when I showed up to work on Wednesday, I was yelled at because I was late. The schedule I had was to start at 2, boss changed it to 12. B. No call / no showed on Monday. I don't work Mondays because of doctor appointments and he knew this. Then I get shunned in front of the customers as he says, too bad we aren't good enough for you. These customers are fantastic, or something along the lines. Wednesdays are actually the busiest days of the week, so I was exhausted. Today hits and now I learn that I am scheduled with the worst workers this weekend. The ones that do nothing, and if they do it's the bare minimum, so you know what? You're not getting much from me either.